Welcome everyone to our Scholarships and Financial Aid Lunch and Learn. I hope you all had a restful Thanksgiving and are excited to be back either at school or work or whatever you may be doing now. I want to apologize in advance. I have a little bit of a sniffle, so if I have to drink a little bit of water throughout the session, it's just to make sure that I don't have a coughing fit. Please remember, if you have questions throughout the session, you can type those into the Q&A section. And as always, I'll share my contact information at the end of the session. So if you have individual questions about your family situation, I'd be happy to help with that as well. This is our fourth Lunch and Learn session. We have one more next week, so I hope you'll be able to join for that as well. Today is all about scholarships and financial aid. To begin, I want to show a couple of graphs for you all to kind of get an idea of the cost of post-secondary education. These numbers were picked from the U.S. News report for the 2020-21 school year. The cost for a public in-state college is right under $10,000 on average. A public out-of-state school is right above $20,000, and a private school is around $35,000. As far as our most popular schools here at Westminster Catawba Christian School, those are Clemson, USC, College Charleston, and North Greenville. And then right in our neighboring state, Western Carolina, is also a popular school. So those cost ranges are between $16,000 and $34,000. And it would be easy, I think, to just look at something like that and use the sticker price to say, well, I'm just going to go to the cheapest school, the one that I have to pay the least amount for. But one thing that you have to do when you're considering financial aid and the affordability of post-secondary education is the sticker price versus the out-of-pocket. The sticker price, as you can see here, it's the top end cost for a college or university before any type of financial aid is applied. And then the out of pocket is the actual cost of attendance after all available financial aid has been applied. When considering colleges and universities, one of the things that I think is super important to use that most colleges have, it's called a net price calculator. And individual colleges and universities have this resource available to families to help them see what that actual out-of-pocket could potentially be based on their tuition and fees and available financial aid. We often, or in my office, what I'll do is I'll have students come in, and if they're curious about the difference in cost for two schools that they're really thinking about, particularly in the senior year, we go straight to that net price calculator, and it helps us just to put in a few numbers that are specific to their family needs, and then we can get a more realistic view of what it will actually cost rather than being petrified by that sticker price, because it can look pretty overwhelming sometimes. So today we're going to focus on 4 types of financial aid, 4 resources that will pull that sticker price down, and 4 things that will help you to make wise choices when it comes to post-secondary education. So let's begin with scholarships. Now, there are several types of scholarships to consider when you're thinking about making plans for after high school, particularly for college and university. In South Carolina in particular, they offer state-supported scholarships, which can be applied to any college or university in South Carolina. These scholarships are available to South Carolina residents only, and there are 3 levels. We have the Hope Scholarship, the Life Scholarship, and the Palmetto Fellows Scholarship. Each of these levels of scholarship have their own GPA and potential rank or test score requirement. For example, the Hope Scholarship, a student needs to graduate from high school with a 3.0 cumulative GPA. And if a student is able to do this, then they will be awarded $2,800, a one-time scholarship to an in-state school. The cool thing about receiving the Hope Scholarship is that if a student is able to obtain the Hope Scholarship the freshman year, and earn a 3.0 in college and 30 hours of credit that first year of college, then they can move to the next level of the state-supported scholarship offerings, which is the Life Scholarship. That offering amount is $5,000 a year. So a person who receives the HOPE can look at moving from the $2,800 amount to the $5,000 amount with that 3.0 and 30-hour credit requirements. The Life Scholarship, if a student wants that directly out of high school, there are two ways to get the Life Scholarship. The Life Scholarship to a two-year school requires a 3.0 GPA. And we're going to get into that a little bit more when we talk about out-of-pocket expenses in just a little bit. But the Life Scholarship to a two-year school requires a 3.0 GPA. The Life Scholarship to a four-year school requires the same GPA, 3.0, and then either an 1100 SAT or 24 ACT, or be ranked in the top 30% of the class. So some of our graduates earn the Life Scholarship with their GPA and their class rank, while others who might be out of that 30%, top 30%, can earn it with the GPA and a qualifying test score. Palmetto Fellows is the top level scholarship in South Carolina, and you can also get that in two ways. You can get it with or without rank. With rank, it requires a 3.5 GPA, be ranked in the top 6% of the class, and have a 1200 SAT or 27 ACT. If a student is not ranked in the top 6% of the class, then they are required to earn a 4.0 cumulative GPA with a 1400 SAT or 32 ACT. With the first two scholarships, HOPE and Life Scholarship, there is no application for these scholarships. The college or university where a student attends will see those qualifying numbers and apply the money directly to the financial aid account. For Palmetto Fellows, that application process is actually done by guidance counselors in conjunction with the qualifying students. There's a couple of pieces of paper to sign. And so then that money is also applied to the college financial aid account where the student goes to school. With the Life and Palmetto Fellows Scholarship, there's also an enhancement available beginning the sophomore year of college for those majoring in a STEM area. And that enhancement is a $2,500 addition to the original scholarship. So lots of ways that our state of South Carolina, if you're a resident, they're trying to find ways to really support students with their post-secondary goals. In North Carolina, we have a lot of families represented in our North Carolina neighboring state. And one of the resources that I point North Carolina residents to is the College Foundation of North Carolina. This is a really great resource to see what scholarships and grants and loans are available to North Carolina residents. In addition, they have a really cool program called the North Carolina Promise. And this is a series of 3 schools in North Carolina that drastically cut their tuition cost for in-state residents. And then an additional 16 colleges who have promised a tuition freeze, meaning whatever tuition you pay your freshman year, you'll pay that all 4 years of school, which may not seem like a big deal, but every year tuition usually goes up for students. So what they're paying their freshman year will likely increase over time. So the fact that there are many schools in North Carolina that have promised that freeze in tuition, you can kind of get a better idea of a 4-year commitment rather than year to year, what that out-of-pocket expense may be. Merit-based scholarships are also available to students, and this varies by college and university. Sometimes they're called academic-based scholarships, but by and large, these merit-based scholarships are based on GPA and sometimes test scores. And the higher those numbers go, the higher the dollars go. Additionally, the application for most merit-based scholarships is the same as the admissions application. So you're likely not going to have any extra work to be considered for these merit-based scholarships. Sometimes, however, colleges and universities have some scholarships that are merit-based but have a separate scholarship. Maybe they have a donor that's connected to the school that wants to see a separate kind of application with a specific essay prompt. So it's always in the student's best interest to go to the financial aid website of a college that they like to see what scholarships might require a separate application. Additionally, if they are interested in a particular major of interest, they can go to that majors page, website, and see if there are any departmental or major specific scholarships. When I attended Winthrop University, beginning the sophomore year, we had specific scholarships based on our major for early childhood, elementary, middle level education, and so on. And it was previous alumni who donated to the school who were educators in the area. So there's always merit-based scholarships available. They might not be just available to incoming freshmen, but it's something to constantly research and see how much money a student can get to ease that out-of-pocket cost. Athletic scholarships are also available. Division I and Division II can give athletic scholarships. Division III cannot give athletic scholarships. So what we typically find with a student being recruited to a Division III school is that they are often offered more academic money if possible to help alleviate that and to aid in the recruitment process. So there are athletic scholarships available. Of course, as a caveat here, this is completely dependent upon if an athlete is a red shirt or a full qualifier. It's also dependent upon that NCAA eligibility. But that money is available for student athletes. One really cool opportunity that I think more students should consider are audition-based scholarships. So we have some students who will major in one of the fine arts, chorus or instrumental music, theater, studio art, and they submit portfolios for these kinds of majors oftentimes and can get scholarships. But one thing to consider for those who would say, well, I love that fine art, but I don't want to major in it, some colleges will offer scholarships to those who minor in a fine art. So we've had students from Westminster who have minored in chorus and auditioned and received a small scholarship to just minor in chorus and sing with that choral group. So there's lots of small scholarships that may be connected to a minor or to a service organization that students can explore as well. Outside scholarships, there are many. I always tell students and families that the process is tedious, but worth it. And the more you go for, the more likely you are to earn dollars. Three of the top resources that we use here, and this is not an exhaustive list. College Board is a great resource for the national level kind of big applicant pool scholarships. The same goes for FastWeb as well. Something you want to consider when you're applying for scholarships is how many people am I competing against, right? And so these large scale scholarship offerings like the Burger King Scholars Program or Ronald McDonald House Scholars Program, those are going to have larger applicant pools, but they're worth trying for because oftentimes the amount is much larger. However, there are local and state scholarship offerings that you can compete for where the applicant pool won't be as large. A new resource, rather new, is called Raise Me. This is an app for your phone if you have a smartphone. You can download the app, create an account, and plug in all the accomplishments since 9th grade. And those colleges that have partnered with Raise Me will offer what they call micro scholarships. So you might get $75 for every A you've earned and $50 for every B. You might earn $100 for participating in Model United Nations and another $250 for being in student council. I've seen some colleges give $75 for completing the admissions application by a certain date. And so you basically are accruing money in a bank account for each school you list on your Raise Me app. And then if you go to one of those schools, then that money is applied to your financial aid account. I really like this for our younger families, our younger students, so that if you have a 9th grader or even a middle schooler coming up, this is an app you can go ahead and download on the phone. It would be a great way to track those things so you don't have to remember everything once senior year rolls around. And meanwhile, you're earning just a few dollars here and there that will eventually add up. I worked with a senior recently, just a couple of years ago. We used Raise Me for Winthrop, and his bank account on that Raise Me app eventually said $1,200, and that could help with books or maybe a meal plan. So every little bit counts. The one thing I will say about Raise Me and some feedback I've received is a student might say, I created my Raise Me account and I put in all my information and none of my schools use it. And that's true. Raise Me is such a new resource that not all colleges have partnered together with them yet. So what I like to tell students is I want to use Raise Me, and I want them to use Raise Me as exploration from a financial aid perspective. It's pretty rare to be able to look at colleges that you may have never even heard of or considered, but when you suddenly see that bank account could offer you quite a bit of money, you might give pause and think about that college or university a little bit more. So Raise Me, if used appropriately and consistently, can really help with that college and university exploration. So a really good option there. All right, so let's talk about merit-based scholarship examples. I wanted to show you this because one thing that I tell students is that when you get a scholarship to a college, the price of that scholarship, or the amount of that scholarship rather, sounds really wonderful, but you want to compare it to the cost of the school. So for example, I've taken some of our most popular schools here again. At Anderson, these are based on the individual school websites, their merit-based scholarships range from $6,000 to $15,000 per year. And if we look at their cost of right at $30,000, then you have to make that decision of if I get that top scholarship of around 15, then I'm going to be paying half. But if I get the 6,000, is that out of pocket still reasonable for me and my family? At the University of South Carolina, their scholarship range is much larger, $500 to $20,000 per year, and their cost is right over $25,000. So again, compare the scholarship to the cost of attendance. Whereas at York Technical College and other two-year schools, as we discussed earlier with the Life Scholarship, with that 3.0, the cost of tuition is covered. And at most two-year schools, they are gonna base their cost on credit hours. So at York Tech right now, it's $184 per credit hour. So all these things can be considered so that we have as little out of pocket as possible. And I love the two-year school option. We have a couple of students right now who, one of them sent me a screenshot of her bill at York Tech, and she said, I'm paying $125 for my freshman year of college. And you and I both know that's pretty amazing to have only that coming out of the pocket. So these are all things to consider, and it's based on your individual family needs, what you feel like you can afford. Now, loans and grants are another way to aid in bringing down the sticker price and easing the out-of-pocket expense. The big application that seniors and their families complete during the senior year is called FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the report shows what loans and grants are available to families based on the information they provide in the application. The very basic mathematical equation that I like to share with families for FAFSA is that the FAFSA asks for how much your family makes, and it considers how much the colleges you list cost, and it comes up with what's available for you. Now, sometimes I have families say, well, I make too much money, so I shouldn't waste my time filling the FAFSA out. And this is a myth for several reasons. Number one, almost everyone qualifies for something. And so if there is any aid available just by completing the FAFSA, we should consider doing that. In addition, a lot of colleges are now saying that you have to complete the FAFSA in order to be considered for their scholarship programs. So it's important to walk through this step. The FAFSA opens every October of the senior's year. So underclassmen should not look to complete this before senior year, but that will be a step in October of the student's senior year. By completing the application, it doesn't lock you into any funds. Once you receive your FAFSA report, some of my students, for example, have already completed that and have seen what's available to multiple schools, but they don't have to accept any of the funds until they've decided where they're going to go, and then they can decide, I'll accept these two grants, but not this loan. So it's very individualized and specific to your family's needs. In addition, some colleges require a CSS profile. This is through the College Board, and it stands for College Scholarship Search Profile. It's very similar to the FAFSA, but a lot more detailed in what it asks. And this CSS profile determines non-federal aid options for students as well. Sometimes students do have to consider taking out private student loans, and the 4 that you see listed here, Ascent, Sallie Mae, College Avenue, and Discover, according to NerdWallet, have the best private student loan options available. This is based on interest rates and just the amounts that are offered. A little caution here, and with any loan or grant or loan that you take out, that's one of the conversations that I think needs to happen early on with our students is, will you be able to manageably pay back these loans after you graduate from college? The loans that are available through FAFSA and CSS Profile are often, they begin requiring payment 6 months after graduation from college. And sometimes those can be deferred for military or graduate school work, but generally speaking, after you get your bachelor's degree, then you're looking at 6 months after that, you need to start making a payment towards those loans that you may have had to accept through those 4 years of college. I am not terrified of loans. In my own personal experience with college, I did have to take out loans to help pay for my tuition. And I was able to manageably pay those back once I was employed full time. So, but it's something to consider ahead of time. You don't want to be inundated with loans, and that might make you feel like you need to look for a college that's more affordable in the first place to avoid having a lot of debt after college. Another thing about the FAFSA to keep in mind is this has to be completed every year of college. So a family might complete the FAFSA the freshman year of college and not receive much aid, but you can complete the FAFSA that sophomore year, and if anything has changed with the income, you may see different results. Additionally, if you have multiple children who will be in college at the same time, by completing the FAFSA for multiple children, then you get more aid. More children equals more aid. We have financial aid night here every year, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But one of the things that the speaker always says is if you have twins, you're going to do great on the FAFSA. So that's something to consider as you are thinking about whether or not loans are good for your family. Grants are typically not something you have to pay back, and grants are available through completing the FAFSA. Some are specific to your state of residence and some are federal. Now, something that comes from the FAFSA and CSS profile results is a really cool option called work study. Basically, a student works in a department of the college or university where they attend, and in exchange, they have a discount on tuition and fees or a stipend that they can put towards tuition and fees. I really like this option. If a student qualifies for work study, they can look to a department where their major is housed or something they're really passionate about, and you're getting work experience and what you hope to have as a career later on, and it's helping you pay for that tuition. Now, if you don't qualify for a work study program, one of the great ways to earn money towards college tuition is just to get a job on campus or right off campus. I was able to do that in college myself, and I would get my paycheck from my departmental job, and I'd walk right over to pay some of my tuition as I could. Some of my peers would work at a local restaurant and pay towards that tuition. So that's another way that students can potentially help pay for post-secondary education, is by working. Okay, so now that's a super brief overview of some options, financial aid options, resources for lowering that sticker price. So now what do you do? What can you do right now? I've put together a list of some things that I think might be helpful. Number one, we need to involve students in the financial aid process. In my job, I do have really good conversations, honest conversations with students, and a lot of the time students are completely unaware of what it actually costs to go to their top school. And so I think by involving students in the financial aid process, it will help them in exploring the best options for them and the family. I tell underclassmen all the time, treat high school as if it's your job, because we see that over time that GPA is cumulative. So they can be earning scholarships as early as 9th grade with things like the Raise Me app. There are other opportunities for 9th graders, 10th graders, and so on through local scholarship opportunities. So high school can be a student's job. It is a student's job to earn that scholarship money. Students should see the breakdown of tuition and fees at their top choices. I think this again will help them make a wise choice about what is going to be best, especially if you decide as parents that some of the financial responsibility will be on the student. And maybe when they see how much they'd have to take out in loans, it might make them change their minds a little bit. So they need to be aware of what they're taking on. Students should apply for scholarships. And again, this doesn't just happen in the senior year. For example, I just posted a scholarship, and it'll be on our e-news as well, hosted by the American Legion. It's a speech contest on the Constitution, and it's open to all high school students. And there are levels of the competition, and you can start earning scholarships pretty early in the competition. And the national winner gets quite a large scholarship amount. And if it's a 9th grader who wins, the American Legion has paperwork that they sign off on, and when that student goes to college, the money will be applied to their account, courtesy of the American Legion. Students should also assist with the FAFSA and CSS profiles. Now, this isn't something students can complete on their own because it asks for parents' income information and tax information, but certainly if you feel comfortable as parents to share that information, I think this is just one more way that students can be educated on the cost and the time and the energy that goes into making post-secondary education affordable. Not only should students be involved in the financial aid process, but they should be involved in the responsibility as well. Now, I think that parents who are able to pay for 4 years of school, that's so beautiful. But I think if students have some responsibility in paying for college, it helps them own it a little bit more. I tell students who have 4 years of college already paid for, maybe talk to your parents about saving some of that money for graduate school. And then if they're able to earn scholarship dollars to help with the undergraduate degree, then some of what the parents have been saving up for can be used for something else. I do think, again, students should help pay for post-secondary education, and it teaches a lot of responsibility, I think. Use available resources. The financial aid webinar or night that we host every year, this year it was a webinar due to COVID, is hosted by the College Funding Coach. Feel free to look them up. They offer individualized college financial aid planning for families. And I will say the earlier you can get in with the College Funding Coach or some resource like it, the better. A lot of feedback we get from our senior families is, I wished I would have known some of this 10 years ago. So if you're a younger family with younger students, reaching out to a resource like that will help you kind of use your financial portfolio to your best advantage and see how you can use what you have to make the best decisions later on. Financial aid meetings and webinars are often hosted by the colleges themselves. These are some things that students should attend, and so can parents. And then once you get into the senior year and you're having to make a decision of what's best, talking with the financial aid office at the collegiate level is key. It's vital because they'll be able to tell you exactly that breakdown of the cost and what those loans and grants mean, and can kind of walk you through that process at the collegiate level along the way. Students and families can also explore state-supported scholarship opportunities. For example, we talked about that LIFE 2-year versus 4-year option. It may be that a student in South Carolina says, you know what, I can't beat 2 free years of education, so I'm going to start at a 2-year school in South Carolina and get those 2 years for free through my LIFE scholarship, and then transfer to a 4-year college and finish out that LIFE scholarship at $5,000 a year and only be looking at an out-of-pocket for 2 years rather than 4 years of schooling. For those students who are looking to earn a 2-year degree, what a great opportunity for our South Carolina residents to essentially earn a 2-year degree almost absolutely free. Students and families should also investigate scholarship partnerships between colleges colleges, universities, and small businesses. One thing that we've been able to find over the years is occasionally businesses want to help students pay for their college in exchange for coming to work for them. We have an alumni who was able to do this with diesel mechanics. And so you have work-based learning through internships and apprenticeships. And so they're going to school and working, and it's being paid for while they work. Another cool resource that can be used for exploration is the Academic Common Market, especially if a student is looking to go out of their home state for college. The Academic Common Market allows students who can't find their major of interest in their home state, but can find it outside of their home state. It helps them get in-state tuition costs out of state. Now, it's pretty rare, but occasionally the Academic Common Market can be utilized. For example, we had a student who wanted to major in mineral and coal mining engineering. What a specific major. And we do not offer that anywhere here in South Carolina. So he was able to work through the Academic Common Market and get in-state tuition to a school in Virginia. We have another student who couldn't find what she needed here in South Carolina and was able to use the Academic Common Market in Kentucky. So this is a resource that you should keep on hand, especially if you can't quite find that major you're looking for. You can work through the Academic Common Market to see if you can get in-state fees out of state. And then research financial aid coverage. Now, this is something that is often, I guess, kind of a surprise to families, but colleges have a certain percentage of need that they will cover, either through loans, grants, or scholarships. And so that's something that you need to ask a college university. Some colleges cover 100% of need, while others may only cover half. So this is an important piece of the puzzle, because if a college doesn't cover 100% of the need, then you're looking at a higher out-of-pocket expense. So I want you to hear a couple of perspectives, one from a current senior and one from a current parent. I'll read you the quote here from a current senior. I think that the best way to find out about scholarships is to refer to the RenWeb page for local ones. I'll explain that in just a second. You have to apply to as many as you can so that you can get more responses. It is also important to have a strong resume prepared and generic essays pre-written so that you can easily add them to scholarship applications. The resource RenWeb that they're referring to is for our WC students, and I post scholarships for juniors and seniors there. Excuse me. But maybe your school has a website page with scholarships or something like that, but whatever resources are available with scholarship listings, it's important to check those consistently. I also like that he mentions here a strong resume. We talked a couple of weeks ago about Tallo, T-A-L-L-O. For our Westminster students, this is a great way to build a portfolio, but essentially, no matter where you are, building a resume throughout those 4 years of high school will be helpful when you're applying for scholarships. And then the generic essays, this is a really great thing to consider. Sometimes prompts are very specific to scholarships, so I wouldn't want students to spend all their summer writing 35 different essays, but certainly there are prompts that overlap. And so you may find yourself writing an essay on your leadership skills or an obstacle you've overcome. And those you may find will be helpful when applying for scholarships, so you don't find yourself in the midst of all these application processes having to write a lot of essays at once. A parent's perspective. My advice is to start super early looking for scholarships. Mrs. Sapp is great, I did not pay her to say this, about posting them on RenWeb, but it takes time to look through them and see what might be right for your child. We are still in the process because we didn't start early enough. There really are quite a lot of opportunities out there, so I encourage parents to make the most of it by not waiting too long. She goes on to say, set a date and explore once a month, starting in 9th grade, and then once a week, starting in 10th grade. So a little bit of a timeline there for you. I think this is really good advice. And again, that RenWeb is specific to WCCS, but certainly looking for scholarship opportunities along the way, just like exploring colleges and plans for after high school along the way, will alleviate some of the stress. And the more educated our students are on plans for after high school, the more able they are to make wise choices about what should be next. So as a bit of a review and some other things to even consider as we wrap up for today, scholarships are often based on grades since 9th grade. So we want to remember that this is cumulative and standardized test scores. Some colleges will offer based on GPA alone, but oftentimes we see those two numbers together. Do not let the sticker price scare you away when thinking about colleges and universities. There's so many financial aid resources to bring that sticker price down, and we want to consider all of those things. Compare the cost and the financial aid package. As we were talking about with the merit-based scholarships, it could look like a really big number, but if the cost of attendance is also a really big number, it might not be putting as much of a dent in that out-of-pocket expense as you'd like for it to. Involve students in the financial aid process and give them some of the financial aid financial responsibility. And remember, the search is a tedious one, but it's necessary. And we need to stick with it and be consistent with it. And the more we apply for, the more likely we are to receive funds. And right along with this idea, you know, just like with anything else, if God has blessed us with any sort of financial ability to pay for post-secondary education, I think it's a great way to honor him by going for as much as we can, giving our best effort to alleviate some of that financial burden that can come with post-secondary education. So if you want to think of it that way, searching for and applying for scholarships is a great way to honor the Lord and a great way to say thank you for what he has blessed us with. So if you have any questions, you can certainly type them into the Q&A section. My contact information is here for you if you have individual questions. Next week will be our last Q&A session, or our last Lunch and Learn, excuse me, and it is going to be, I think, my favorite one, if I can have a favorite one. We're going to be talking about celebrating when God says yes and when he says no. So I hope that you will join us. Again, if you need to review the information from today, you can go to our school's YouTube channel to check out the video again, share it with a friend that you think might be benefited from it as well. As always, thank you for joining me. And if there are no questions, I'm going to close this in prayer. I hope you have a really good afternoon. Let's pray. God, you're good to us. Thank you for today. Thank you for letting my voice hold up for today's session. Lord, you are a blessing to us in the smallest of things and the biggest of things. And Lord, when we think about scholarships, financial aid, the cost of college, boy, is that a big thing. And so I pray that for each family represented here today, God, that you would give them wisdom as they think about the future. Lord, it might be a few months away for college. It might be years away. But wherever they are, I pray that you would just give them wisdom as they explore. Would you give them clarity to your will for their own lives and their students' lives as well. God, thank you for loving us and being so gracious to us. We love you, Lord. Amen. Thank you all for joining us. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to end the session, and I hope to see you next week. Have a great day.